what I found was that, commercial real estate or real estate in general is a team sport, right? You read any, real estate book 101. What do they tell you? Discover your why. Number two, figure out your goals. Number three, pick out a team. Number four, pick out a market, all these things, right? Well, it's a team sport, right? And I had my why, I had my goals, and now I realized that I had to be part of a team, especially on the commercial side, because I wasn't a skilled underwriter. I just got started. I never asset managed in my life, right? I'm not a property manager. I wasn't picking up my family and moving to a sexy location like Austin, Texas, or Phoenix, Arizona, or Jacksonville, Florida. At least not yet. And but I figured, I could probably raise capital.
Welcome to the Healthy Investor Podcast with Bob Mastroianni, where you and I will learn from successful real estate investors, entrepreneurs, and other highly driven individuals about their journey and the healthy habits and routines that play an integral part of their growth. All right, welcome back to the Healthy Investor Podcast. I'm your host, Bob Mastroianni. Today I have with me, very excited to have Tim Lyons with me. Tim is the co-founder and managing partner of Cityside Capital, which is a real estate syndication and investment company. Tim's also a lieutenant in the New York City Fire Department, where he has served for over 17 years before becoming a real estate investor. He also worked as a part-time emergency room nurse RN in a level 1 trauma center. His initial goal with real estate was to create passive income and in turn be able to spend more time with his family, his wife and his 3 girls. And partnering on a small multifamily property, he saw firsthand the power of real estate investing as an opportunity to create passive income and build wealth for his family. Tim is also the host of a co-host, of a podcast with his brother Greg. And he is a co-author of a #1 Amazon bestseller. Wow. Tim Lyons, thanks so much for being here. Appreciate it.
Bob, it's my pleasure. Let's make it happen today, huh?
Yeah, great. So real quick, wanted to talk to you about, so I heard you speak, I guess about a year ago at Multifamily Mastery #4 in Orlando, and your story really struck me. So I know you were you're not a volunteer, you're a firefighter for New York City Fire Department, and maybe you could tell a little bit about that story about, I guess, COVID hit, and then this was really the time frame that you transitioned into real estate investing.
Yeah, Bob, well, thank you for the introduction and thank you for having me as a guest. I'm excited to be here. So, like so many other investors that we have met on our journey, Bob, we kind of get stuck in the W-2 grind. A lot of us have that kind of same trajectory. And this is exactly where I found myself, right? So I had the dream job. I was a New York City firefighter. I'm now a lieutenant. I get to sit in the front seat. I get to honk the horn, do the sirens, right? It's a great job. I love being a New York City firefighter. And like other firefighters, I had a second career. A lot of guys do, HVAC, roofing, general contracting, stuff like that. I'm allergic to a hammer. My wife won't even let me hang pictures on my walls in my house, so so I didn't have those. So I went back to nursing school to become a nurse because I worked with 5 or 6 other nurses. They had the nice cars in the firehouse driveways. Their wives didn't have to work, and they always had steady side work whenever they wanted it. So I like to joke around that I was pre-med for about 15 minutes back in college before I joined a fraternity. So I had that kind of like medical, purpose in my life. I kind of enjoyed that stuff. So, fast forward into my career. I got 3 little girls at home and I'm working 70, 80, 90, 100 hours a week. And I'm like, dude, this is not sustainable. I'm not really that, happy, like, my kids were feeling it. My wife was feeling it. And all along, I always had that someday mentality of someday I'll get into real estate. Someday I'll do this and someday I'll do that. I'll do all those things. And it kind of just hit me, I had to take action. I couldn't put it off anymore. So, like somebody else, that you probably heard, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad on a summer vacation in July of 2019. By November of 19, I'm buying my first 3-family property with a friend of mine because I needed that proof of concept. I needed the house to be So I needed that certainty of being a landlord and figuring out, does it work? Because Bob, being from the Northeast, we have very limiting beliefs up here in like the New York City area, right? Like, you're guilty till proven innocent. Like, I don't trust anybody. I don't trust the process. And like, I needed that certainty. So now I had it. I did better on my taxes. I was cash flowing, and but now I had three jobs. I was a firefighter, I was an ER nurse, and I was a landlord. And I was a full-time dad and trying to be a good husband. So something had to give, and so I let go of the nursing career. I resigned, and it was good, but I was all in on real estate. All right. So now I decided to jump into some mentoring. And Bob, we've talked offline about my limiting beliefs about mentoring and coaching and paying for that.
Sure.
But I found a great group, and I was going to work from 9 to 3:30 while my big girls, who were maybe, I don't know what they were, 8 and 6 at the time, while they were in school, and the baby was going to be napping or whatever. And then that was March of 2020. 2 weeks later, I'm doing a homeschool with everybody's home. I can't work on this. I can't work on this new business, this new venture that I'm trying to do, because we have COVID, and we were going to flatten the curve in 2 weeks. So that turned into a nightmare, right? And what happened, Bob, was I work in a very, very poor neighborhood in Queens, with um, just a lot of people, a
Mm.
lot of people, and they're on top of each other. A normal one-bedroom apartment might have 10 people in it or more.
Wow.
And so COVID hit, and the New York City Fire Department, we do a lot of stuff every day, and it was as if the fires stopped, the car accidents stopped, the odors of gas, the burning of food while you're cooking, everything
Mm.
stopped, and all we did was CPR, 24 hours straight every
Wow.
day. And people would drop on the street, people would be dead in their beds, people, it was insane. Like, it wasn't even like it's even surreal to talk about today, because we've come so far in like these 2.5 short years, right? But we were scared, right? So like, I brand new baby at home, I had two little girls, I didn't know what to do. Like, we didn't really know what COVID was, but we knew people were dying, right?
Mhm.
So like, instead, I would shower at the firehouse before I came home, and I would like change my clothes as soon as I came in the house. And within a week of doing that, the guys in the firehouse started getting sick. So my wife's like, I don't know, Tim, like, if we should, have you home with us, like, this is safe, and we didn't really know at the time. So I said, you're right. I said, so I moved out of my house for 9 weeks. And so I moved out, and my mother-in-law moved in, so we swapped homes. And instead of being in a bad, dark place about it, I had just joined this multifamily, mentorship coaching program, and I just dove in. Like, I literally dove in with like head first. Went through all the modules, started calling all sorts of people. I was calling banks, like banks were like closed. Remember, like we were like, it was essential workers only. And I'm calling banks being like, hey, I'm a brand new investor, just trying to see, if we can develop a relationship. And they're like, dude, we're trying to process PPP loans. Like, you're buying real estate right now? What are you, crazy? But I had to get my at bats. I had to start taking some swings, right?
Yeah.
So for 9 weeks, that's all I did. I woke up at 6 in the morning. I went to bed at midnight. I just read books. I listened to podcasts. I connected with people. I had to keep that positive mindset, because otherwise it was going to be very easy just to grab, a bottle of wine and kick back with
Hmm.
some ice cream and watch some Netflix, right? So that's what I did. And I really credit that 9 week period with really launching, my real estate career and my business. So
That's such an incredible story. And, it's interesting. And, I'm in South Jersey, right outside of Philadelphia. And I know the area that you work in, not all that far from me, probably a little less than 2 hour drive. And I recall in the beginning of COVID, that area was hit pretty significantly. And I definitely recall, have family members who are in healthcare industry and in hospitals. And I remember talking about all these people from New York are coming down here and going to our hospitals because, there are no beds up there. And so it, interesting that, unfortunately, you had to make the decision to be away from your family for 9 weeks. But it's also very interesting to me that, the approach that you took, because I think, you sort of alluded to it at the end, that so many of us can easily turn our mindset into, okay, the negative or the non-productive, right? It's so easy to sit around and just turn it into TV time, turn it into, whatever. And you really utilized every one of your minutes that you were awake, right? You're either at work or you're working on this new business. And I can only assume that this really springboarded the beginning stages of your new business to where it is now, right?
That's it. I mean, people, I was starting to become active, Bob, on social media, telling people about my three family, and just kind of documenting that journey a little bit. But then, I made the pivot into multifamily, and it's a different ball game. I had to learn. That's why I got coaching, right? I needed to learn a new language, essentially. I needed to learn spreadsheets and reading, P&L statements, and how to qualify for financing. Like there was it was a whole new chapter of my life, and I kind of went on a rampage to get educated and to really dive in, because I wanted to hit the ground running. I mean, I left my nursing job. That was probably 30 to 40 grand a year in extra income that I just
Sure.
walked away from to start this business. So, and then COVID hits, right? So it took me 6 months to do my first deal. Which was a 43 unit in York, Pennsylvania, that I partnered on with actually the coach that I was working with in our group. And like that was just like the door that was opened for me at the time, and it was huge. It was like the biggest door that ever opened for me, and that led to that was September of 20, and then we did 144 units in December of 20, and 148 units right in the beginning of 2021. And mind you, this is during COVID, right? This is down
Yeah.
30%, crash in the S&P. This was during the height of uncertainty, and I'm sending emails out to my friends and family, being like, "Hey, remember I told you I was doing that real estate thing? I got this incredible deal, and people thought I was nuts, but I mean, now looking back, that was a great time to buy." So,
Yeah. So, and now, for your business currently, about how many units are you currently having under management?
um, it's over 6,000 at this point, right? So we're 6,000 and
Wow.
change. And that was obviously, I just had my first deal was September of 2020, and that was 43 units. Both times, I mean, like it was one of those things where I think people were scared. People were looking for, yield, right? I mean, because at the time, interest rates were still rock bottom. So money market accounts, 10-year treasuries, all the quote unquote safe, liquid type of investments really weren't giving any yield. So, stocks were volatile, and real estate, whether we like it or not, it's been more democratized since 2012, since the passage of the Jobs Act. And people are just, beginning to realize that they can participate in a passive, manner. Right? We're still in the dugout on this one, as far as the passive investing goes. So, I think I came into it at a good time, and I was able to raise some capital. I was able to, partner with some incredible people, and just the law of the first deal that people talk about, it kicked in, and one deal begot another, and then it just kept on rolling.
Wow. So, speaking of raising capital, I think one of the biggest, brick walls or limiting beliefs from a lot of people who, especially people who come from W-2 world and move into real estate investing world, right? One of our mentors once said to me, the two most important things in any real estate investment is you need to bring deals or you need to bring dollars, right? So one way or the other, we need good deals, and we need obviously the capital to fund it. So capital raising, I'm guessing, coming from a fire department and nursing career, was probably a very new concept for you. And then, so maybe you could talk a little bit about, I guess, sort of twofold. One is that I know that you've become a certified representative of a broker dealer with your your licensure, and then just the idea of raising capital and how you overcame some of that limiting belief, because I think that's really a big one for people. I know it strikes me. I've been in started real estate investing in 2008, did a lot of small opportunities, but everything that I've done to this point has been my money, my time, right? So now capital raising is a new thing. So I just would love to hear how you were able to work on that.
Well, this is my favorite topic to talk about, Bob. So thank you for giving me that softball. So listen, I mean, like, in the beginning, as a New Yorker or just as like a human being, like there's a lot of uncertainty with real estate, right? We have all these stories about Uncle Joey who lost some money in real estate 20 years ago, so therefore real estate's risky. And in that mindset, especially growing up in like the New York City area, like you couldn't, like no one really around me was a landlord, right? Because the prices were so high that there wasn't really a cash flow play per se, so the people that I knew that owned real estate, when they sold it 20 or 30 or 50 years later and they cashed out, they looked like a hero. But it probably wasn't a great investment for them along the way. So like that was my mindset. Also, I wanted to do it myself, right? I mean, how does Bob? Everyone that we know probably starts out by buying a single family, and they wanted to do it themselves. Then they realize that they hate being a landlord or it's too much work, and then they either sell it or they offload it to a property manager. I think I just hit it right where I was saying, look, I'm doing this thing, right? Here's how it works. You can be a passive investor. We're going to buy these big commercial properties, and we're basically investing in a cash flow stream, right? You can go buy a business, you can go buy a franchise. You're buying a cash flow stream. That's all you're doing. And it's the same thing with commercial real estate. So I was able to kind of craft that story and craft, within my friends and family, college roommates, next door neighbors, some guys in the firehouse, stuff like that. But it wasn't easy, right? And what I found was that, commercial real estate or real estate in general is a team sport, right? You read
Sure.
any, real estate book 101. What do they tell you? Discover your why. Number 2, figure out your goals. Number 3, pick out a team. Number 4, pick out a market, all these things, right?
Sure.
Well, it's a team sport, right? And I had my why, I had my goals, and now I realized that I had to be part of a team, especially on the commercial side, because I wasn't a skilled underwriter. I just got started. I never asset managed in my life, right? I'm not a property manager. I wasn't picking up my family and moving to a sexy location like Austin, Texas, or Phoenix, Arizona, or Jacksonville, Florida. At least not yet. And but I figured, I could probably raise capital, right? And in the process of learning how to do all those other things with my mentors and my coaches, I could raise some capital, right? So that was how I got started. I didn't have any systems, no processes. I had a Yahoo mail account to start, and I basically just made a spreadsheet with my brother Greg one day and was like, all right, let's just put on the spreadsheet everybody that we think has money, right? Aunts, uncles, friends, college roommates, the whole thing. And we sent out an email to, I don't know, 40 people, maybe 50 people, and we got a bunch of them on the webinar, and we raised a grand total of $150,000 for that first deal.
Nice.
And I didn't think I could raise $5, but then I had some proof of concept, right? Like, okay, like I see how that works. So let's invest in the business, right? Let's get a CRM, let's get some structure around this. And that's when we really turned it on. And the next raise was $500,000, and the next raise was 650,000. I just kept on, it just kept on getting bigger and bigger, but people then started seeing what we're doing. People then started getting distributions on the monthly or quarterly basis, and then they tell a friend or they tell somebody else. Now, like, it really crystallized that I could build a great business by serving investors, by just being that person that they can call and say, Tim, how does this work? Explain to me how it works. Take me through a case study. And, this sounds like a great opportunity.
Wow. So that's really interesting. And again, like I said, I know that becomes a limiting belief for so many people. And you just sort of got out there, learned about it, learned how to do it, and then, made it happen. You brought people together. So that's really interesting. And that concept, I think we hear it all the time, right? write down all the names of the people who you think have money, right? And then reach out to them, and being prepared, I'm sure, being prepared for that seminar, being prepared for that Zoom to get them on there, and just to give them an understanding. And I do think that is one of the misconceptions right now, is that I'm not trying to sell you anything. I have an opportunity. If you'd like to be a part of the opportunity, here's how you can take place and, take part in that opportunity, right?
Well, look, I mean, this took a lot of coaching, right? I mean, I had a coach for capital raising, right? I had a coach for mentorship and multifamily, because you can't just attack somebody, especially somebody who doesn't know, real estate, and just saying, look, IRR, equity multiple, cash on cash return, 5-year hold, blah, 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 blah. Like, they don't hear any of that, right? I mean,
Right.
if they're going to do this, they're going to invest in Tim Lyons because they know, like, and trust Tim Lyons, right? So, I would probably cringe, Bob, if I had the recordings of some of those early phone calls, because they're probably horrific to listen to. But I wish I had them so I can learn from them. But here's the thing. I mean, when this is just one way of doing it, right? And people, what I found was that by and large, people don't know what's available to them, right? Everybody has a job, right? Everybody's busy. Everybody has a to-do list a mile long. Raise your hand if you're not overwhelmed right now, right? If you don't have fear, if you don't have uncertainty, and, like, to learn a new thing, it's like, almost learning a new language. Like, who has time for that? So when there's somebody, so like, that's where when they say, like, if you build a business and you niche down till it hurts, that's how you can be, profitable, by solving people's problems. That's where my brother Greg and I said, look, I mean, people, we know they want to be involved in real estate. It's like one of those things that's kind of like on a lot of people's bucket lists, but they just don't know who to trust. They just don't know how to get started. Right. So if we can, put out content and create blog posts, and we started a podcast, we started a YouTube channel, breaking down some of these little limiting beliefs, or these little nuggets of getting started and getting out of your own way, and then opening up that dialogue to, all right, you got me, right? Like, tell me how this works. Like, and that's just kind of how we got started, right? And don't get me wrong, Bob, the guys in the firehouse, they still call me Lieutenant Madoff, and they want to know how my Ponzi schemes are going, and they're always, busting my chops. But I mean, look, I mean, I have a bunch of civil servants who are actually accredited investors. I mean, who would have thought? I had no idea that firefighters, had these lucrative, side businesses. Like, we don't talk about really what's in our bank accounts at the firehouse.
Sure.
Who's kind of doing well and who's not. But I mean, it was incredible, right? I worked in a hospital, so the doctors, PAs, nurses. When I left, they were like, "Dude, what are you doing?" Right? And now they see what I'm doing, and it's so it's been pretty powerful. I mean, I've kind of had a I feel grateful and lucky that I had a built-in network to kind of start from, and to serve, and that just brought me to where we are today.
Yeah. So you mentioned your brother Greg, and I had the opportunity to meet Greg last weekend at Multifamily Mastery 5 in Orlando. So it was cool. We sort of bumped into each other, and he instantly said, "Oh, I recognize your name, and I recognize his voice from your podcast." So I know you have the Passive Income Brothers podcast, which is one that I'm subscribed to, and I really enjoy listening to. Question for you about
Thank you.
that. So we talk about team, we talk about building a team. At what point did it feel right? And did you know that it made sense to bring your brother into real estate, and for you to partner up with him? You hear so many people say, "Oh, you can never work with family," or "You should never invest with family." And it seems like you guys have a really good thing going. So when did you realize that made sense?
Oh, Bob, I'm so happy you asked this question. So to the people who are listening on a podcast and they can't see my face, I'm like smiling from ear to ear, because Greg is my older brother by 4 years. And I remember being at his house in Virginia, and we're about to go either for a run or get a workout or something. And I'm putting my sneakers on next to him. And I tell him, Greg, I said, I'm thinking about doing this thing. And it was about paying 20 grand for coaching.
Mm.
And he looked at me with like such disdain in his face, like, bro, like, he goes, are you kidding me? What are you doing? What are you talking about? Right? Like, he laughed at me. And within a few weeks, he called me up. He's like, listen, man, I see what you're doing, and I want to be a part of it, you know. And I said, "Oh, really? Oh, that sounds interesting." Because a couple of weeks ago, you thought I was crazy, right? So, but you know, I mean, look, I mean, he and I, every time we go on vacation every year, we talk about, you know, let's start a business, let's do this, you know, what's the next big thing, you know, like we, you know, just having fun with it. But you know, we were very aligned with our goals and our values, and so it was easy, right? He's my brother, and you know, I mean, I love him, I love his family, I want to see him do well, right? So when we came together, it was easy. It's still easy to this day. I mean, I get to talk to him, you know, 30 times a day. And do we have disagreements sometimes about, you know, a process or a thing? Of course, you know. But I think it is easier when he is your brother, because then, you know, at the end of the day, you just say, all right, bro, you know, I still love you, and you know, let's see what we're going to do tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, I think another interesting point that I'm not even sure that it clicked to me as you were saying it, but how many other businesses could you run a successful business, work together, be in the business together and both, you know, doing your functions, but yet he's in Virginia and you're in New York, and you
Yeah.
still have the ability to communicate about the business because this business does lend itself to sort of being a little bit more remote, and you can be anywhere. You can have partners who are anywhere. So, you know, I think if you and your brother decided to start a more hands-on, in-person type business, it would have been a lot more difficult, right? Being geographically separated. Either somebody's got to move or something has to give a little bit, right?
That would be a good one. That would be a good fight to the finish. Who's going to give up last and be the one to move? But yeah, no, I mean, it was, yeah, I mean, look, I mean, we, you know, iPhones, Zoom, I mean, like all these, you know, Zapier automations. I mean, there's an incredible amount of technology that we've now folded into our business. That again, like I had no idea how to use, how to even, you know, implement. But by getting a business, you know, coach, basically, you know, helping us to, you know, to scale and to get our systems up and running and into place. I mean, that's just, you know, it's a testament to the technology that we're able to do a lot of this stuff.
So I want to transition over. This is the Healthy Investor Podcast, and you know, one of the reasons I began this podcast is because, you know, in my early 40s, I decided that you know, I needed to change some things as far as my health is concerned, and I noticed that many of those things started to change my focus for growth personally, professionally, and as I've continued to grow, I learned that so many other successful people with growth mindsets really do spend a bit of time focusing on their healthy portion of the journey too. So, you know, I know you're a firefighter. You just mentioned you and your brother doing a workout or going for a run. So, what does that look like for you? And then, how does that contribute to your, you know, to your business success?
Well, Bob, I love this question too. I mean, I just turned 40 in June, and you know, I made a lot of life changes in the last couple of years. You know, but whether it's working out or I stopped drinking. You know, right before COVID hit, just because I wanted to be healthier. My mom had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's dementia at the ripe old age of 69.
Mm,
Um, and, you know, so like there was a lot that hit, you know, like I started this business, COVID hit, you know, craziness is going on. So I said, you know what, you know, alcohol is not going to serve me during this time. Right. So I cut that out, you know, whether it's to my mom's, you know, situation or whatever. It all kind of just made sense. Just started, you know, eating a little better. Right. Just, you know, I always ate well at home. But when I go to the firehouse, I ate like, you know, like a slob, right? These humongous plates that we have, and there's always donuts and cakes everywhere. So just being more intentional about that. And then, you know, I've always kind of hated to run, Bob. But you know, as you get a little older, you start to hold on to some more of that weight, unfortunately, right? So,
yeah.
ended up being, you know, I got into CrossFit here in town, and a place called Orange Theory Fitness, you know, that would force me to run because just don't love it. But you know, then it took off, right? Because now you start seeing results, and you start feeling better, and I start sleeping better, and you know, start waking up early to do this business. I'm up at 5 in the morning. You know, if I was, you know, having a couple of glasses of wine, I wouldn't be getting up at 5 in the morning. So a lot of that had to do with just like that healthy mindset, and like, getting and priming myself for success by setting myself up for success with the exercise, the sleep, the diet. I still like meditate sometimes, a couple times a week. I don't know if I'm doing it right still, Bob, but I give it a shot anyway, right? Because all these things kind of come together, and I don't think it's any surprise that we've been able to have the success that we've had in the last couple of years after I kind of implemented some of these changes.
Yeah, and it's so great to hear you say that. And I did a short stint of CrossFit in the beginning stages, and I'm a little bit older than you, and I found injury several times, and I was like, oh, maybe that's not exactly the right approach. For me, I found triathlon, and
Hmm.
it's been a fun thing for me. I run pretty regularly, and then biking, and most of my swimming is more in the summertime. Um, but it's so true, when you get your day started on the right foot, and you're feeling better, you're doing healthier things, and then all of a sudden it's just like, I want to keep doing healthy things. And for me, I find, and this is sort of what you were saying too, that the more I've taken a healthy step in the morning, the less I want to eat something that's going to make me feel terrible later in the day. And
Yes.
the opposite is also true too. So when I slip off of my regular routine of working out, I'm it's so much easier for me to say, like, I'm right outside of Philly. So we say, oh, let's just have a cheesesteak tonight or something like that, or, pizza and wings. And so and then that changes everything, right? It really is kind of a domino effect into the positive direction or to the negative direction.
That's exactly it. I mean, when we were always athletes growing up, right? And we're always in great shape. And then we kind of, get into our working years, then we become parents, some of us, right? And, it's easy to have some of those things, go by the wayside. And I that's where I kind of I found myself right during I guess 2019. I don't know if I was having a midlife crisis in my late 30s, maybe. I don't know. But so often I felt like I was just trying to win the day, Bob. I wasn't trying to outperform, and I think it had a lot to do with, like, I heard, one of the podcasts I listened to by Brendan Burchard. He says, take your meds, right?
Mhm.
M for meditation, E for exercise, D for diet, S for sleep. And I wasn't taking my meds. I wasn't taking it seriously. And I read a book. It's called The Miracle Morning. I know you're going to ask about a book later on, but by Hal Elrod. So when I became more intentional about some of this, like, personal growth and development, something I never even like thought I'd ever get into, it clicked, right? And then it just clicked, and I just felt like at home with it. And I was kicking myself for not starting that kind of stuff earlier. But yeah, I mean, I feel better than I ever felt.
I'm so glad you mentioned the Miracle Morning. And I know I've mentioned it a few times on my podcast, but that really is the one thing that changed things for me. I heard Hal Elrod on a podcast. I believe it was a Bigger Pockets podcast. Hal Elrod was talking about the Miracle Morning. And, I was looking for something. At the time, the story I told myself was that I wasn't a morning person. I was a late person, right? I was an evening person. I sat up and
Mhm.
watched late night TV, and I found this Miracle Morning thing, and I just said, I have to give it a try. And then, you know, I decided to commit to it for the 30 days. And then 30 days turned into, I did the Miracle Morning for the better part of 2 years. I did it for like 635 days or something like that out of 2 years. And then decided to adjust the routine to what works for me a little bit. I kind of adjusted it on my own. But that concept of wake up, start your day on the right foot, do those few things. I was sort of laughing when you said you're not sure if you meditate properly. I don't know that there is a right way to meditate. I think it was so foreign to me when I first tried it. I bought
Mhm.
this app, and it was called 2 Minute Meditations. And I said, well, if I can meditate for 2 minutes, right, that'll be the beginning of it. And then I felt different after a 2 minute meditation. So, good for you that you're continuing to work on those things. And obviously you definitely feel better and see positive results from it. So that's awesome.
That's it.
So I want to transition into the final three questions that I ask everyone who comes on the show. The first question is, what is your definition of success?
I kind of adopted my definition of success from a guy named Brian Covey, or Covey. I still haven't, Brian, I'm sorry, I just butchered your name on this podcast, but he said it was, the ability to do what you want, when you want, with whom you want, whenever you want to do it. And when he said that to me, we were at this mastermind event in Nashville, Tennessee. That clicked in a big way with me. Like, not that I'm always going to work hard. I'm always going to be doing something. I'm never going to be the guy with my feet up, having some sort of tropical drink on the beach because I'll get bored, right? But it was the ability. Like, I think it was really the ability to do those things. Like, that's what I consider to be successful. Whereas 10 years ago or even 5 years ago, I felt like I was working paycheck to paycheck, and you know um yes, I put money into my 457 and my retirement accounts. Yes, we went on 2 vacations a year. Yes, Santa Claus came every year. But I just still felt like I was fighting uphill. Whereas when everything started to change and I became more intentional, now I have that ability to do certain things with my family, and it's just nice not to have to worry about that. So I'm on the track. I'm on the right track, but I still have a lot of work to do.
I love that answer. I love that answer because I think, the more and more I ask the question, no one has ever said to me a specific dollar amount. No one has ever said to me a specific number of units. And there's such a overwhelming trend of time freedom, purpose freedom. Those answers right there, and that just, it means a lot to me, and it's becoming more and more clear to me that really is what the definition of success is, right?
That's it. To stack on top of that real quick is, I had a mindset coach that really took me out of like my own way. Early on, I signed up with him, and he has something called the five freedoms. And it's on my wall right over here. And it's time freedom, financial freedom, freedom of association, right? So like, whoever you want to be with, right? Jim Rohn says you're the average of the five people you spend the most time with, right? Location freedom, and then freedom of purpose, right? So like, being able to do and be free to write a book, to start a podcast, to take a vacation whenever you want to do it, to show up at your kid's school to read a book on a random Tuesday at 2:00, like, and not have to ask somebody to take a half day or something like that, is another definition of success, is those attaining some of those five freedoms.
Great. So for someone who is new to investing or even just learning to focus on their goals and their path to success, could you give a good book recommendation?
Yeah, in addition to The Miracle Morning, I would say, the two books that really moved the needle for me was Rich Dad Poor Dad. And then as soon as you put that book down, you got to pick up The Cash Flow Quadrant by Robert Kiyosaki, right? Same author, two books, because one is like more the mindset, laying the foundation, and another one is more tactical, which I think people always want to go to the tactics first. But if
Sure.
you have that foundation and you roll it right into the tactics, I really think it's powerful to do that.
Okay, great. So before we get to the final question, I just want to thank you. I really appreciate you coming on, and appreciate you taking the time out to speak with me. Personally, I feel like I probably could have spoken with you for another hour and a half, so I want to be mindful of your time here. But so how can we support you, and then how can people reach out and contact you?
Yeah, so you can check us out on our podcast. Well, first of all, give Bob a 5-star rating and review for his wonderful show here. But once you're done with that, you can head on over to the Passive Income Brothers podcast, and we kind of do the same thing, right? We highlight successful real estate everyday people that are making it happen, and you can check us out on the website citysidecap.com, and that's those. And I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram. So all the major social media channels.
Great. Well, thank you. I appreciate you saying that. And I follow you on all those places. So you definitely add a lot of value, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Final question. If you could think back to me, to a young Tim, around ages of 10 to 12 years old, knowing what you've learned so far on your journey, what are 3 pieces of advice that you would give to a young Tim, or even any pre-teenage child, to help guide towards success?
That is a powerful, powerful question. One that you can't take very lightly, because I grew up, pretty modestly. I'll say it, like that. And I think it was always, looking for the dollar amount, or looking for the wrong version of success, or the misguided version of success. So I would say, to the young folks, like, you know, um, follow your heart, right? Follow your passion, follow your gut. Like, as a firefighter or a nurse, I've had to rely on my gut a lot, right? And every time I have, I've ended up in a better spot. I'll put it that way. So, follow that heart, follow that gut, get in the right room. It's hard when you're growing up. You're a teenage boy or a teenage girl, right? There's a lot going on. Even in your early 20s, as old as you think you are, you're still a youngin'. Get in the right rooms, find out who you want to, be like, and get in that room and try to add value to whoever you can. Whoever's made it to the place that you want to be one day, try to add value to them and learn as much as you can.
Wow, that's great. So great. Thank you so much for being on the show. Make sure to check out his podcast, Passive Income Brothers, with Tim and Greg Lyons, and check out their site. Thanks so much for being on. And for everyone who's listening out there today, make it a great day. Thanks so much for joining me on the Healthy Investor Podcast. Check out the show notes for more information about connecting with our guest. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please head on over to iTunes and leave a positive rating and review. It would mean the world to me. I'm grateful for your support, and I wish you an abundance of success on your journey to healthy investments and a healthy life.